All right, Mel, are you ready? You're on mute.
There we go. Sound check. Yeah, I'm so ready. Let's do this.
All right, welcome everyone. It is just about 5 o'clock. We're going to get started right on time. And you're going to spend the next 45, 60 minutes with Magical Mel. So I hope you enjoy. And I'm going to put her on like big screen view. And if you have any questions, put them on the side and she'll try to get to those at the end or at like breaking points throughout, whatever she finds comfortable. But I hope you enjoy, and it's all you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you as well. Okay, so today's webinar is about eating psychology, in particular, one of the dimensions that is rhythm. I kind of wanted to like back up and talk a little bit about eating psychology, kind of like as a general principle, and then also kind of my story that led me into this type of education. So eating psychology is based on the Institute for the Psychology of Eating, which was founded by Mark David. And the idea here is that what you eat is only half of the equation to nutrition. Who you are as an eater and the thoughts and feelings and beliefs that you bring to the table directly affect your metabolism based on stress versus relaxation and how your autonomic nervous system is regulating and communicating what is needed in terms of metabolism. So we see a lot of really cool, not cool, I find it cool, but we see a lot of dysfunction or suffering around the relationship with food. And a lot of times this looks like a self-fulfilling prophecy where there's a fear of food or a fear of fat in food. And this fear drives this downregulation of metabolism, which ultimately leads to storing more fat and not digesting and assimilating your nutrients to the fullest capacity. And that's basically anti-health and all of the things that you're kind of looking for in that relationship anyway. So it's a really fascinating field. I found it after the birth of my daughter, and this was kind of important. So I have 3 children. My oldest is a little boy. He's going to be 8 soon. Then my daughter is now 3.5, and then my little baby Hank is 1-year-old. But I didn't really reflect on my relationship with food. I knew I had some quirky behaviors or disordered eating habits. And I never felt at home in my relationship with food. It was, or in my body for that matter. But what I realized after my daughter was born was I was watching just how she was in her body and how much she loved her body for all of the things it could do. And I realized like, I love your body and I love all of the things that you can do. And whether you have the 200-pound clean and jerk or you fit in a certain jean size is completely irrelevant around that because you are your beautiful soul. And this body is your interface with the world. And that is really special. And so why do I then turn around and devote all of this life force into this really constrained relationship with food and kind of, take this path of hating myself, ultimately hoping to arrive at this body I love. But the truth is that if you keep putting this feeling of confidence and love and happiness in your body out into the future, it will stay constrained out there because the only time that you can feel those things is in the present moment right now. So let's jumping a little bit of ahead, but at the end of the day, I was reflecting on my daughter, on her relationship, and realizing like, where did I get my behaviors from? And I'm not saying that I got it from my mom, but my mom did model some of the things that we see in society when it comes to a constrained relationship with food and body. And I remember specifically, like, she's in the bathroom getting ready to take a shower, and there was always a scale, and she always weighed herself every day before her shower. And just to watch the number change, and it could even be the number that she was hoping for, but she would still be disappointed. Oh, well, I still have 2 more pounds I could lose because this right here or this right here. There was always something. And I mean, she's in her mid-50s now and she still diets. And my grandmother, bless her heart, is in her 80s and she still diets. And at some point, it's like, I love you for you. And it doesn't matter what the number on the scale says or what the number in your genes says. You are a force to be reckoned with, and I would love for you to show up as I currently see you. And just being able to like kind of like put the mirror out and say, hey, you can do this. You can break this cycle of this negative self-talk, this negative body image, and start with this next generation, which is where BirthFit is just so incredible, is that we are making differences. It's going to impact future generations of the human race. And that is so cool. So anyway, I ended up at the end of the day finding the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. I took their coach certification class, and like, it was just completely mind-blowing. I cannot recommend that enough. If you are interested in this stuff, you're going to absolutely love a course like that, or even just some of the books that Mark David has written. Momo is going to kill me. That's okay. Okay. So my intention for tonight is to provide a space and a lens of rhythm for you to look at your own life and where you could potentially have room for growth or for your personal evolution. And this is really cool as it relates to fitness. If I can just kind of tie this together for you, if we think about the functional progression, right? They're innate movements based in dynamic neuromuscular stabilization and the research done by the Prague School for Rehabilitation. But we have an innate program on how we're driven to engage more with the environment and develop these mature functional movement patterns to create this foundation for us to do really cool things like in gymnastics, or like I was a pole vaulter. Like, that's not necessarily the most functional thing you could do, but those movement patterns enabled me to do cool things like that. So the same thing is kind of true when it comes to food, in that rhythm is that foundation for metabolism. You have this foundation, this clock. You have genes that are considered clock genes that create the circadian rhythm that are turned off and on based on light, based on temperature, based on, the hormones released by actually eating food. Like, there's all kinds of really cool external regulations of this innate rhythm. And when we see dysfunction in movement, right, we return back to those innate origins. And the same thing here, when we see dysfunction in our relationship with food, we can then return back to this innate rhythm origin. And so it's a great, great place to start. When you feel like there's really nowhere to start, you feel like you don't have a good sense of your connection with body, like, let's start with rhythm. So I hope you kind of enjoyed this little presentation. Okay, so rhythm, again, is one of those 11 mind, body, nutrition dimensions. And along with stressed versus relaxed eating, we've got the speed of eating, toxic nutritional beliefs. These are those fears that you're bringing to the table that help to inform your metabolism. Pleasure, nourishment, embodiment, macronutrient balance, food quality, allergies, sensitivities, and then the use of powerful substances. Hello. Not right now, baby. Okay. All right. So there are all kinds of life-sustaining rhythms in this world. You have orbits, if we're thinking like super big picture, right? This gives us our tides, our seasons, our sense of time in space. We've got biogeochemical cycles, like the water cycle with evaporation and perspiration. We've got the carbon cycle, the phosphorus cycle. All of these things have this innate rhythm to them. We see life cycles for an organism itself, right? Like for plants, microbes, animals, there's this birth, there's this maturation, the ontogenesis, then there's a senescence, and then finally death. And there's a cycle to it, there's a rhythm. And then even within an organism, we have all of these life-sustaining rhythms. Think of your heartbeat, your breath, your sleep cycle, menstrual cycles, and then of course, metabolism, which brings us to today. So one of the things that we notice very quickly is that when we lose these innate rhythms, disease occurs. So like, let's again, go back to that big picture, carbon cycle. We are currently, through our over-reliance of fossil fuels, we are taking more carbon out of the earth and putting it back into the atmosphere, which is greater than the natural exchange of gases between land and sea and atmosphere. So we see this effect of climate change, with carbon being one of the greenhouse gases contributing to this effect, right? There's an ultimate like disease of the globe in that aspect. If we look at the heart, like you can think of any arrhythmia of the heart where your heart beats too fast, too slow, out of sync. Ultimately, this can lead to heart attack, stroke, or death. If we look at breath, right? If you have too much oxygen, too much carbon dioxide, this changes the acidity of your blood, and that can lead to all kinds of issues, ultimately death. right? If we look at sleep, and if a lot of you are moms and you've had, a post breastfeeding child that's waking up every couple of hours and disrupting those sleep cycles, you realize how awesome, not awesome you feel whenever your sleep cycles are messed up. In fact, right, sleep is a form of torture, or sleep deprivation, and constant waking is a form of torture. So, all right, now let's move to metabolism. So I wanted to share the innate rhythm of metabolism. What does that actually look like? So upon waking, your metabolism, based on hormones and gene expression of those clock genes and light and temperature and all of those things that we talked about before, it rises with the sun and it peaks at high noon between like 12 and 1:30. When the sun is highest in the sky, your metabolism is the strongest it's going to be in the next 24-hour period of time. Right after that super high spike, your metabolism takes a dip. And this is what we know as the 2 o'clock feeling, right? This is between 2 and 4-ish. And then there's a secondary rise. This occurs between about 5 and 8 p.m. And this is a good rise. I say good, but this is a reasonable rise, but it's not as high as that lunchtime peak. And then finally, metabolism is the lowest between the hours of 1 and 5 a.m., where the body's energy is fully devoted towards sleep, healing, growth, restoration. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about sleep's and this healing aspect, how it's completely integral to metabolism. Okay, so I have some like really cool science that we could kind of quickly talk about when it comes to circadian rhythm. In a few studies where they studied night shift workers, where they studied people who were rotating shift workers, where maybe some days you work days, some days swings, some days nights. And then, of course, in mice, they found that the incidence of obesity and metabolic syndrome, which is this cluster of stroke, cardiovascular disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, this cluster of symptoms occur whenever we are messing with that circadian rhythm, that natural metabolic rhythm. And for a pregnant woman, shift work is especially dangerous. So if you know someone, or if you yourself has a job that you do shift work, if there's any way you could talk to your employment about your health and the health of your baby being prioritized over the shift that you're currently working, I would strongly recommend that, because we do have some studies to back that there's an increased risk for preterm birth weight, for miscarriage, because what's so crazy is that some of these clock genes are located in the reproductive tissues. Like, how genius is this? So we need to set mom's environment up for safety. That's what we want the external environment to signal to baby, so that development can occur as it was designed to occur. So, all right. They also did some really neat studies on babies who were preterm and exposed to like a natural shifting of light and dark cycles, and then babies with just constant straight light in like a neonate unit. And what they found was that babies who have those light and dark cycles have better growth, better daytime activity, and like in utero, this is the cool thing. At 31 weeks in utero, babies have a pupil reflex. So like whenever it's dark, right, like your pupils get bigger so that you can let more light in and see. And when it's light outside, they get smaller. Babies in utero have that. They are picking up on these light and dark cycles in the womb, which is just amazing. It's so cool. Okay, and I really didn't mean for that to be scary, just to point out that we have data to support mom and baby in this critical time of development and setting up baby for the best possible growth. So let's talk about sleep really quickly as a part of metabolism. It is so important to honor these metabolic dips and not try to push through them, which we as Americans, as women, as working women are very accustomed to. I am extremely guilty myself as of late of grabbing a coffee at 2 o'clock when I feel like I am just struggling to stay awake at work. And but to actually pause and maybe do some belly breathing, some meditation, some relaxation. Okay, that's enough. Thank you, babe. This is a recorded webinar. I need to let you go. Okay, thank you. All right. Oh, goodness, Deb. Okay. So intentional rest can mimic sleep. That is amazing. So when your metabolism is dipping, whether at night, whether at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe first thing in the morning when metabolism isn't super high yet, spend that time in meditation, spend that time connecting with your breath, watching The Thinker, right? What's so cool, I'm reading this book right now. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, he's freaking genius. He talks about this thinker and the knower. Like the thinker is like the kind of the persona that lives in the head, right? That's constantly questioning, trying to make sense and judgments of things. Like it's an important part of our survival, and it served a huge evolutionary purpose. But if we want to not be enslaved by the thinker, we have to start embracing the knower, which comes from this idea of witnessing the thinker. So spending this time to promote healing, what happens typically is that when you kind of can step out of that thinker and observe what's happening, who you're being in this period of time, that's where like wisdom occurs. That's where things just kind of come from within and you can't quite explain it. It's something your conscious mind probably never would have come up with on its own. But that's where true wisdom is happening. And it's all part of, like, it's all interwoven with this idea of metabolism and sleep and, merging these two together to create synergy and to create a life that you love. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I did want to kind of close really quickly on this idea that you are an N of one, a sample size of one, that your personal metabolism may not look precisely like I described. And that's when we start to like settle into the knower, settle into that innate body wisdom, the asking yourself after a few deep breaths, what it is that you need right now. I tell a story at the coach seminar when we talk about eating psychology, but I love ice cream a lot. And sometimes when I'm feeling especially like unloved, or I feel like in fact, when I go to the freezer to like eat the ice cream, I don't really understand what I'm feeling. I'm just kind of responding out of a reflex. And there was one time where I stopped, where I was ready to like eat the whole quart of ice cream or whatever it was. And I took like 8 to 10 slow, deep breaths to try and drop out of the thinker and into the knower and said, what do you actually need right now? And what came up for me was a hug, right? Like instead of using food or ice cream or something that was ultimately not getting me to my desired outcome in terms of health and well-being, I really just needed some love. And ice cream doesn't necessarily provide that, but it's a great symbolic substitute, or so we think. So, but one of the things I do want to address here is that when we talk about rhythm and we talk about this idea of, eating a breakfast and eating lunch as your biggest meal of the day and maybe dinner as being a smaller meal of the day, I typically get asked about fasting and basically kind of ignoring those innate rhythms, which I do want to bring up this idea of this perfect diet, and then fasting as a tool. Fasting as a tool has unbelievable benefits when it comes to autophagy, when it comes for that's when your body is basically cleaning up inefficient tissues, and it's just kind of like cleansing, in sort of like a detox kind of way. It's really, really beneficial, and it's not aligned with innate body rhythms, but at the same time, it's a great tool. So people who do intermittent fasting as a lifestyle, like just nonstop, I would recommend probably not doing that. I would cycle intermittent fasting to bring it back to this idea that it is a tool, that there's these innate rhythms that, you return to that are your foundation. And then from there, you can kind of do different things. So like the pole vaulting and the functional progression, right? Functional progression is my foundation, and it enables me to go do other cool things and other skills like gymnastics or pole vault or swimming or hockey and, any other movement that you could think of, breakdancing. So what fasting I tend to see a lot of when it comes to fasting is this idea and this quest for the perfect diet, because I think to some extent we are simple creatures. We want there to be a right way to eat. And nutritionally, in like the field of nutrition, we are collectively stuck in this idea of this kind of fanatic phase of nourishment that there is one right way and that is it. But if you think about it from like a lifespan perspective, the needs of an infant versus the needs of like an 8-year-old versus the needs of a pregnant woman versus a postpartum woman versus a 90-year-old are constantly different, and we're talking about the same person. So you are different from me, is different from me back when I was 2 years old, is different from who I will be. Your needs are constantly changing, and the only person that would know this is you and the knower within you. So, so with that said, I guess I want to recommend rhythm as a place of a starting point, of that foundation. So for a woman who's lost touch with her inner knower, who has lost touch with like where to begin, where to go, I get a lot of women who just say, I've programmed out what to eat, and I've weighed and measured my food for so long that I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that structure. I don't know what I would eat. And a lot of times it's a fear of not being able to stop. And that's totally a topic for another conversation on another day. So anyway, that was about 20 minutes. I would love to spend some time answering questions, because honestly, eating psychology is best discussed in a conversation setting, right? Like I can lecture, but really when it becomes personal for you and we can talk about, and I can ask you more questions, that's when the magic really happens. So I'm going to go ahead and look over here at the chat box. Oh man, there's so many chats. Okay. Let's see, this light is really bright. Okay. Oh, let's see. Amen. Smiley faces. Okay. Show up in your life where you're at. Totally. Oh, you guys are so sweet. Okay. Oh, the author. Yes, Mark David. He's written a couple of books. The first one I would recommend as like a complete introduction to eating psychology is Nourishing Wisdom. If you've taken my postpartum series, you've already got the book. But he's really great. He also wrote The Slow Down Diet, which kind of dives into a little more of the science behind this metabolic power of slow, and how we live in a fast-paced world. And when you eat quickly and you eat distractedly, you are, number one, missing key parts of digestion. There's a part of digestion that actually starts in your head. It's called the cephalic phase digestive response. And you need to experience a meal in order to start getting those digestive enzymes ready for metabolism. So he goes into like all of this, which is really, really great. Okay, Mark David. Yeah, Mark with a C. Okay. Leah, I mentioned, autophagy. Yes, when I discuss fasting. Would you mind going further? Yes. Okay. So autophagy, I'm going to type this in. Okay. So that the Latin for autophagy like this means self-eating. So it's basically your immune system, and like the macrophages and the dendritic cells, these are your phagocytes. These are the cells that kind of gobble up debris and inefficient tissues. And they have all these really cool vacuoles that have really powerful digestive enzymes inside them. And they just break things down and it turns into metabolic waste essentially. So what autophagy is when your immune system is helping to clean up inefficient tissues and cells. So let's say resources are plentiful. We have been in a really celebratory phase of nourishment. It's, I don't know, maybe like a week of Thanksgiving. You guys go to have Thanksgiving at this person's house and that person's house, and you've eaten a lot, probably more than what you've used to, and you kind of feel like you need to cleanse. And so I see people do fasting kind of after the holidays. So what that's doing is kind of cleaning up some of those extra stores, like burning more fat as fuel and cleaning up maybe tissues that are kept around because the resources are there, but maybe they're not as efficient as they could be. And so your body kind of cleans that up. So when the going gets rough, your body gets real efficient and starts cutting unnecessary cells and tissues that are more work for you to carry around versus doing work for you. So I hope that answered your question, Leah. All right, talk more about temperature and light. Yes. So from what I've seen, you have these genes that help regulate circadian rhythm. And your genetic blueprint is not this thing that's black and white, right? There's all of these epigenetic factors, which means external influences that either turn off or on genes, up or down regulate genes. So you think of it as like a light switch. You can turn it off or on, or a dimmer. You can kind of scale up, scale down. There's all kinds of different regulatory mechanisms for epigenetics. Light and temperature are some of those. So the more light there is, the warmer it is, the more those metabolic genes are turned on, and the more protein products and digestive enzymes and all of those things they are producing to support metabolism. So, all right. And again, like I said, just because the lights are on and it's warm all the time doesn't necessarily mean that metabolism is on all the time. You need those dark cycles too, because you need to devote energy to growth, restoration, and healing. All right. Okay. Awesome. That's great. Okay. All right. So next we've got Eileen. She says she works with a few bikini competitors that generally either utilize clean eating or tracking their macros. Most of them lose their period and are told by their GP that this is normal. So thoughts on how to approach without stepping on toes. Okay. So I don't doubt that that is normal, right? Like that's what a GP will see when you restrict fats and you restrict calories that way, because losing your cycle, that's losing your fertility. You're basically signaling to your body that we don't have enough resources to support life. And I would agree that would be the case. And so when it comes to a woman, Eileen, I would ask her, like, what does she want? Does she want to be a bikini competitor and a mother? Because there's really not a ton of room for both if she's dieting so hard that she's lost her cycle. So, I mean, it's really her choice at the end of the day. You can support her, like, hey, is doing this modeling and this, you know, these bikini competitions, is this where the golden nugget is? Is this where you feel called, where you want to invest all of your life force? And if the answer is yes, go for it. Go for it. No one's telling you that it's wrong. It's just, you know, getting clear on what the woman wants. And so if she does say, well, I've gotten to this point where I'm tracking. I really want my cycle to come back, but I'm struggling with not tracking. That's a whole nother conversation. So again, we could totally come back if she wants to. We could, like, you could kind of start working in this idea of macronutrient balance versus weighing and measuring. So you focus on food quality, that she's getting nutrient density, and that she's getting all of her major macronutrients, carbs, proteins, and fats, and kind of like letting her slow down, letting her be present with her meal, and see if she can, you know, start getting more in touch with her knower, with her innate body wisdom. Okay. Yeah, Desiree. Totally depends on what they want. Perfect. Yeah, it's totally their choice. Okay, Lauren, what would you recommend for those living in the further latitudes? Yes, as an optimal light-dark cycle that would have a significant effect on rhythm. Yeah, so we totally see this and the consequences of it. So I have a good friend who is, if you guys don't know, I'm in the Air Force and we move a lot. And my friend who just moved to Colorado, she just came from Alaska, and she was really depressed during the winters there because there was no vitamin D. She wasn't getting those light cycles. She was like, it was crazy, and it was societally systemic, these effects of the light and dark cycles. So I know that they make some cool lamps that you can help regulate. They do some light therapy in Alaska and other places where those rhythms are kind of thrown off. I would look into that. Also, depending on what you want, potentially look into moving, right? So I don't know if that's a possibility, but crazier things have happened. Go Air Force. Oh no, go Mel. Okay. Oh, you're sweet. All right. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Man, we're just cruising. It's only like 30 minutes into this thing, and you're asking great questions. What do you guys want to know more about? Maybe it doesn't even have to do with rhythm. Could be like maybe some of the other eating psychology dimensions if you wanted to talk about. Or Matthews, yeah.
Mel, do you have, this is a good one. What are your strategies for stress eating or emotional eating? And then I was going to ask, like, do you recommend different portions or density in foods throughout, like, different cycles of the day or different cycles of the month, like heavier meals versus light meals?
That's really interesting. So again, it kind of comes back to that knower, because typically people reach for warmer, heavier things in the wintertime versus the summer. Or if you see people who live like in Miami, Florida, they tend to like feel good eating salads year round because it's hot as balls there. So it kind of, there's a whole, like, you would learn about this if you read Nourishing Wisdom. There's a whole component to eating and diet when it comes to geography and like where you are and kind of like the personality of your city even. So like, you know, small town Kansas versus New York City, people like are going to treat food and approach food and eat different foods differently there. Like even the same person who is living in different places will have a different diet in those different cities. So kind of like the hippie naturalist in me would say, you know, go with the seasons. Like they're kind of there for a reason. Even though we might not have a bunch of scientific data to support it, this whole nutrition industry is really young scientifically, and we are coming out with new, like more, you know, even research that's turning old dogma on its head. Like it's constantly changing, and we're constantly learning more about it and all the interconnectedness of it. So that was great. And then specifically, did you mention, you know, we didn't even talk about like rhythm of pregnancy or postpartum. What was I thinking? Holy cow. Okay. Really quickly on that. So in pregnancy, your metabolism, it looks completely different, of course, from whenever rhythm as a non-pregnant woman. In fact, people as a way of, as like a therapy for losing weight, will inject men and non-pregnant women with HCG, which is the hormone that signals to your body you're pregnant, and it kind of keeps metabolism turned on. So it's one of those hormones that helps to regulate metabolism. So your metabolism is higher. You are having to process more nutrients. You're having to turn over more waste. You're having to constantly supply energy to this growing baby. So yeah, that's going to look different too. And that's a little bit why eating pre-pregnancy and eating during pregnancy can cause a lot of stress for a woman, because it's different, and we want that staple, that like one way of eating. And it's hard, but I think it's a universal preparation for labor and birth and postpartum to start dropping into your instincts and into your knowing.
Mm.
Okay, so some strategies. Laura, great question, for emotional and stress eating. Okay, so number one would be to, as best you can, drop into a relaxation response or get that autonomic nervous system kind of back to that optimal functioning. So the most easiest go-to way is 8 to 10 slow, deep breaths. Practice your diaphragmatic belly breathing here. That's a great time to do that. Sometimes saying a prayer, if you're spiritual, you pray over your food before eating it, is a great way to kind of drop into more of a relaxation response. Another thing is to only eat when you eat. So put the phone away, turn the TV off, set the mood lighting, have a conversation with someone, breathe between bites. It's a constant practice for me, but if you think of metabolism like a fire, oxygen is needed to fuel that, right? Like the more oxygen you feed a fire, the bigger and stronger it gets. Same thing for metabolism. Breathe between bites, and that should really help slow things down. What I challenge all of you guys to do, just like for like a day, is just become aware, like start a stopwatch and just see how long it takes for you to eat breakfast or lunch or dinner. And when I do this exercise, I find that I can eat a meal in about 3 to 7 minutes. It's kind of like, like my sweet spot. And that is ridiculous because your stretch receptors in your stomach take about 15 minutes or so, probably in a generous estimate, to signal to your brain that, hey, we've got a sense of fullness here. So, you can't hear anything. That's not good. Let's see, Allie. Do you need headphones? You might need headphones. I'm not sure. Okay.
I messaged her privately. She may have to rewatch the thing.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Allie. Okay, let's see. Laura, I hope that answered your question. So we're going to do a little thumbs up. Okay. Hey. Oh, 2 thumbs up. Great. Okay. So breastfeeding, additional calories, food you take in daily, should they be a good balance of protein, carbs, and fat, or just one? I heard someone say most of those calories should be carbs. So there's a lot of lactose in breast milk, right? That you make from the sugars that you are consuming. So um, some people, like even like a woman who's lactose intolerant doesn't digest lactose, that lactose is not going to go to her breast. She's going to use the simple sugars and her body will compile them together. And she's going to compile, this is so cool. Her body is going to create other sugars that we don't utilize. And this is going to feed the baby's microbiome. Like their sugars, she's spending energetic resources for the bacteria in her baby's gut to keep them going. That is like amazing. Okay. I would say, though, to like truly answer your question, you're probably going to be craving more carbohydrates, and there's a reason for that. So I would say keep those as nutrient dense as possible. Like try not to get those from donuts and ice cream. Try to get them from like sweet potatoes and quinoa and rice, and maybe some heavier carbs that have a little bit more fiber content to them, mostly for you, but also especially, yeah, because I guess you're postpartum now, breastfeeding. Awesome. All right. If that didn't answer your question, please let me know. I will come back and reattack that. Okay, Leah, what are your thoughts on the blue light reduction strategies at night? Yeah, so we've seen scientific evidence that is a good strategy for promoting better sleep hygiene. So no more screens at night. Honestly, trying to like honor, like if you, so like right now for me, the sun is starting to kind of go down. It's more like dusky right now. For us to like kind of match that inside the house, to like start turning lights off. You're helping to signal your internal environment based on your external environment. So yeah, I would say definitely try that. Try reducing the screen usage at night for sure. Okay. Yono? I'm not sure how to say that. That's a cool name. What if you're too stressed to be hungry? Oh, but you know you should be hungry, like not having not eaten a lot during the day. Okay. So that is a tough place to be in. And I get that. I'm thinking back to the times where I was too stressed to eat. And I think that there's a sense in honoring that as well. Typically there's a loss or a sense of grieving, and then your body's way of kind of cueing like a natural fasting state, to kind of help get you, detoxified and kind of not back on track. But I think it's a supportive signal from your body at the end of the day. Of course, if this goes on and on and on, or if the thinker is saying, I'm not hungry because, for X, Y, and Z, but the knower is saying, I know, I am hungry. I'm hungry for, maybe you're hungry for a conversation with someone. You could be hungry for a lot of things. So sometimes you might find that when you're getting to the root cause of, the signal to your body, that this is somehow a divine message, that if you investigate, if you spend some time in breath and asking yourself, what do I actually need right now? You might be able to kind of cue your appetite back again. So I would try that. I would try stepping into the present moment, because stress tends to be a little bit of a dwelling on the past, or maybe an anticipation of the future. And neither one of those can you control. And neither one of those are happening right now in the present moment. So as best you can, connect to your breath, and really start, diving into what it is that you truly need right now. What would nourish your soul, not necessarily what will just feed your body. Because the body at the end of the day lives downstream of the soul. And when you are providing the soul what it needs, the body will follow. The body will basically kind of rise to support that higher purpose. All right. Hope that answers your question. Coping skills for hormonal eating. Yeah. So, okay. So when this happens, here's some of my recommendations. And these come from like personal experience and some tools that I've learned. So there's typically, again, a divine message in this. So I really, really want chocolate at ovulation and right before my period, like so badly. So I get some really high quality chocolate and I breathe and I enjoy it. And I don't sit there and eat like an entire bag of M&Ms mindlessly and then feel guilty about it. I go into it knowingly. Like I go into it like with my eyes wide open. I'm going to eat this chocolate. I'm going to enjoy it. And you know what? Then sometimes you look at it and you're like, oh, maybe I need a little bit more magnesium or iron or some of the extra things, or maybe some extra fat that I haven't been getting in my diet for whatever reason. And there was kind of like a beautiful design to that craving. Yeah. And so again, when it comes to hormonal eating, like especially pre-menstrual cycle, like pre-flow, what your body is doing is it's storing glycogen in your uterine lining to potentially support a baby or a fetus. So glycogen is basically stored sugar. That's what that is. And so it makes sense that you would want more carbs and sugars leading up to your period, and you're retaining more water because hormonally you are getting ready to support a life if implantation occurs. So if it doesn't occur, then you menstruate and your antidiuretic hormone starts coming into, or actually it starts leaving the body. And so you start peeing out more water, and then, of course, the flow happens and those glycogen stores are incorporated and utilized in your body. I mean, it's a beautiful design. And it's a little bit infuriating because it's never the same. And we kind of would like that for it to be that simple. Okay. Great fire analogy. I like that one. Okay. Okay, Dawn, breastfeeding topic when your little is up random times at night nursing or their schedule changes due to sleep. Oh, okay. Feels the same and you could become starving at 2 a.m. Do you recommend eating that? Yes. Okay. So breastfeeding hormones change. They change your sleep cycle. This is amazing because when you're breastfeeding, it's not as hard to get up in the middle of the night. You actually don't fall into a deep, deep REM sleep unless you've been drinking or, maybe a couple other things. Like if all of you moms who have breastfed and the first time your kid sleeps longer than normal, you wake up like because you are programmed to match their sleep cycles. An infant sleep cycle is not like an adult sleep cycle. You actually sync up with them. And you're less tired. You can respond more quickly. You're more alert. This is why like co-sleeping while exclusively breastfeeding and not drinking is the best possible situation. You're not going to roll over your baby because you never really drop into a deep sleep. You rest, but you never really feel like super recharged. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know this, but yeah, when it comes to eating in the middle of the night, when you're breastfeeding, your innate metabolic rhythm is again different. So, if you're hungry at 2 a.m. and your baby's if you guys have seen little Brady, this is Don's little boy. Oh my gosh, he is like a champion eater and he is just like the chunkiest, awesome little guy ever. I could see why you would be hungry in the middle of the night. And it's probably because you're working to build more milk to meet his demands. So yeah, breastfeeding, a totally different conversation when it comes to rhythm and metabolism. It's different. So yes, Lorna is so cool. Okay. Oh, you guys are awesome. All right, Marianne. Okay, some more breastfeeding eating questions. While breastfeeding and starting any workout or intense training routine, any recommendations on how to replenish nutrients to support your body and baby? I'm assuming counting macros is probably not recommended. Oh my gosh, it's like you know me. Okay. So when it comes to starting a workout regimen, or when you say the word intense, we have got to prioritize recovery and see this as an investment in performance. I was having a conversation with Nast from BIRTHFIT Hawthorne today, and she was saying she had a conversation with Spencer Hendel about how long it takes for an athlete to go to the CrossFit Games. And he said probably 2 to 3 years. And she's like, why would it be that long when we're learning? You've got people who have, maybe come from a certain community and have a lot of these skills and backgrounds. Like, why couldn't they be good enough sooner? And he said it's a mindset thing, and it has to do with recovery, is that everyone wants to train and not recover, and they're ultimately plateauing their gains. It's the athletes that train hard and recover hard that end up getting there in the end, right? Which is so cool. So, Marianne, to answer your question, the recommendation on how to replenish nutrients, I would eat high quality foods, eat your like eat kind of like eyeball check. Do I have carbs? Do I have proteins? Do I have fats on my plate? And are you eating until, or are you like leaving? Are you still hungry at the end of the meal? If the answer is yes, or if you're kind of like fasting in between meals, and you're super hungry, I would say you could support nourishment a little bit better. And then also by recovering hard. So lots of hydration, lots of rest. So like on your rest days, like truly, truly rest. Active recovery feels good, but it needs to ultimately be from a place of pleasure. So because pleasure, again, is that growth, healing, restoration, and wisdom. So that's what we would like. Yes. Counting macros is a good tool. For some women, it's a great tool. It helps them achieve their goals. But for the everyday woman, I wouldn't necessarily say that that would be my go-to recommendation. All right. Oh, I'm so glad you guys like this. This is really fun stuff. My mind was totally blown going through the training. So, all right. You could turn on your, you could ask a question if you like, or we could keep doing the chat box window, kind of whatever you want.
Mel, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know if everybody's heard about the Queen in Training stuff, but can you elaborate a little bit about how, like, from princess to queen, and maybe touch on the food relationship there too?
Totally. That's a great question. Thank you. Okay. So, the Queen in Training, kind of like this BIRTHFIT mindset that we talk about, actually kind of came from the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. So Mark David talks about these archetypes, which are universal, timeless energies. And we take these on. And as women, we go through this evolutionary process of kind of immaturity to maturity, which goes princess to queen in training to queen. Princesses, by definition, of like 0 to age about 35, are your women of childbearing age. For a princess, her body is kind of her ticket to getting all of the things that she needs, like safety and affirmation and love, and a partner. So there's we internalize a lot of our success and our worth based on our body. And so it makes 100% sense why like this is a thing for us, that we have these relationships with food and body that maybe we have to kind of be in touch with and evolve with. So this idea of queen is, Laura, I honestly thought like my husband was coming behind me and I was like, whoa, it kind of scared me because your box is next to mine. It was so cute. Whoa, LaCroix, nice. Okay. So the queen is a woman who like gets her self-worth. She is serving her queendom. She doesn't need the affirmation. She doesn't do the negative self-talk. She stands in her power and serves her community. So you guys can think of queens in your life. Like these are just like rock star women who don't give an F about, what the number in their pants says or on their dress says. They just go out and they rock it and they show up really fully and they take up space, not just like physical space, but like energetic space. Like, when they enter a room, like that's a queen. And so what we're trying to do at BIRTHFIT is kind of introduce this idea of queen in training. This is a princess who is in curiosity and she's in experimentation around her queen. So like, what does that look like for you? What would the Queen Mel be doing? What would the Queen Laura be doing? Or Matthew's, you're already a queen, so I can't even use you as this example. But like, get curious and try it out. Like that's what's really cool is like all you have is right now. Like that's what you have in your span of control. So give it a try. Like what fills you up? What lights you up? And what do you need to do to get there? Like, who do you need to be in this world? And so that's kind of a little basics behind Queen in Training. And so, yeah, I guess when it comes to food, we see a huge investment in the body as a princess, and we see more of an investment in the soul. And what you find out, and what I'm finding out in this practice of Queen in Training, is your self-expression comes through in all of your relationships. Like it comes through in your marriage, it comes through in your, like how you engage with your coworkers, and it comes through in your relationship with food and body. And, you know, like for me, what I've come to, like, I want to be a leader. I want to be this confident woman. I want to be strong and capable. And what's cool is that, like, in my relationship with food, like I'm starting to see more of that occur. So like I don't think about food the way I used to. I used to be so neurotic, like sort of exercise anorexic with a little bit of bulimia peppered in there. And I mean, it was ridiculous. And it was just siphoning off my life force. And it was making me physically smaller. It was making me energetically smaller. I was showing up as a half-assed version of myself. And I didn't want that. So I eat delicious, nutrient-dense foods that fuel my recovery and make me feel, you know, mentally like I'm at a high level. I just, yeah. And I'm excited for you guys to try this out as well. So, all right, Matthews, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, for sure. I would take maybe one more or two more questions if anybody
Okay.
has them. Yeah.
Fire away. Actually, I have a question for you guys if you want to respond to this.
Yeah.
So I mentioned these 11 eating psychology dimensions, and we wanted to do more of these eating psychology webinars. Like, where would you want to see the next one? So some of the ones that I was kind of contemplating doing were the toxic nutritional beliefs. That's a really cool one. And then one that Muma expressed interest in was the use of powerful substances like alcohol, caffeine, stimulants, and things. Like, that would be kind of a cool one too. That one? Okay, Desiree.
Yeah.
Okay, we could totally put that on the schedule for upcoming webinars. Yeah, but like everyone, feel free to chime in. Let me see some of my other favorite ones. I mean, they're all really fun. So like the food allergies and sensitivities can be a cool one. Eating speed. Oh man, we could do so much with like stress versus relaxed eating, and then eating speed. Yeah, that's the idea of nourishment. So there's a lot. Eating speed. Thanks, Laura. Anything? Oh, you're so sweet, Eileen. Yeah, we all need to slow down. So I talk like, you know, don't put me on a pedestal. Don't think that I have this like perfect relationship with food and body, because I don't. It's completely imperfect for me. There's some days where I feel really empowered and like I'm working with the knower, and then other days I'm eating a cart of ice cream again, you know, because I didn't slow down and breathe and ask myself what I needed. So eating alone versus with family. Yeah. My husband needs eating speed. This is great. Okay. Yeah, eating alone. Okay. This is an interesting concept. So you can kind of create kind of like whatever mood or atmosphere you want to, in my opinion. You can make eating alone like pretty like sensual and pretty cool, like kind of eating with yourself. Like there's something kind of neat about that. If you come at it, or if you approach it with a mindset of this sucks, I hate eating alone, it could, you know, it's going to kind of fuel the fear and the stress fire a bit, which ultimately reduces your metabolic fire. Eating with family, again, can go both ways, right? Like you can be eating with family and having a really nourishing conversation, and you can also be eating with family and it be completely chaotic. So, I mean, the idea here is to kind of cultivate this idea of presence. And, you know, being in touch with who you are in this time. And if we're like relating this to birth, I used to try when I was pregnant meditations, like where I was in the middle of the gym with the music blaring and people slamming barbells and walking around, and I'd be like laying on the ground meditating, because I was trying to cultivate peace amidst chaos. And if you think about labor and birth, it's kind of like a skill that you would want to start cultivating. So it can be whatever you want it to be. Like you can have a really nourishing meal alone. You can have a really nourishing meal with family. You can have a really stressful meal by yourself or a stressful meal with family. It kind of just that's when I recommend dropping into your breath, dropping into the knower. All right. When I used to travel a ton for work, eating alone used to make me feel so powerful and sexy. Yeah. I want to say, who was it? It was like a supermodel, like a Giselle or Marissa Miller or someone. She would eat naked, like completely naked. And she would just like enjoy her food and enjoy her body like all at the same time. It's like that is a cool concept. So you could really spice it up, Lauren. You can try eating naked and tell me how that goes. So, or not. You totally don't have to do that. You don't need to share that. um,
That's awesome. Cool.
so yeah.
Any
Okay.
last words of wisdom, Mel?
Oh man. Gosh. I mean, I'm like really, really present with this idea of now being the thing that you have, and it's the only thing that you actually have. And so bringing past things into your present meals and bringing anxiety potentially about the future into your present meal, it's kind of unnecessary. Like if you stop and breathe and you ask yourself, what problem do I actually have right this minute? Chances are it's either a problem from the past or a problem in the future, and the answer is none. And so that's hard. It's a hard lesson or hard
Practice.
it's a hard practice. Yeah, totally. Because at the end of the day, like we're humans, and this idea of kind of transcending our human nature is scary and really hard. And your thinker doesn't want you to do that because the thinker, is looking out for its own survival, right? The thinker got us here. So,
Yeah.
okay. All right. You guys were fantastic. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for all the love. This was really, really fun. So,
Yeah. Thanks, Mel.
yeah, absolutely.
We'll get this up on the website so you can share with your friends or whoever, hopefully in the next like 24 hours. So thanks all for showing up.
Yeah.
Good info, good convo. I can't wait till the next one.
Same. Yeah. All right. Take care.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.